Welcome back to KeYona TV, the one, the only. We are broadcasting from Bulawayo and on channel 398 on Azam TV, and of course we are available on many other platforms including digital terrestrial television. So if you are watching across Zimbabwe and across the African continent, I am with Mr. Sindiso Mazibisa from the One Bulawayo movement discussing the recent election of the Bulawayo mayor and of course the councillors. And now we are going to move our discussion to the national developments that have been happening, as we saw President Mnangagwa announcing his new cabinet, and then the day after we saw him swearing in the ministers, and just a quick rundown of the provincial ministers. That's where our discussion will start. Bulawayo province, Judith Ncube was retained. Harare has Charles Tavengwa, while in Masvingo there is Ezra Chadzamira, while Owen Ncube, the former Minister of State Security, has been given to Owen Ncube. And then Manicaland is vacant as yet. There is yet to be an appointment after the reversal of Noktula Matsikenyere's appointment as he was a non-constituency member. And then Mashonaland East has Aplonia Mzwerengi, Mashonaland West Miriam Chombo, Mashonaland Central Christopher Makomo, Matewele North Richard Moyo was retained, and the former Minister of Education Evelyn Ndlovu was reassigned to be in charge of Mateweleland South Province. Mr. Mazibisa, what is your take on these appointments and the role of these provincial ministers?
It's a very contentious political and legal argument.
Right.
Contentious legal argument because there is no law that specifically provides for provincial ministers. But there is also no law that prohibits the appointment of provincial ministers.
Right.
Remember, this is a recycled argument, legal argument, because these are not cabinet ministers, but they are appointed as provincial ministers by the president.
Operating in the Ministry of the OPC.
Exactly,
right.
Office of the President.
Department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now that we've got the constitutional issues of provincial councils, it makes political sense to then say, without the non-administrative and political parameters of the provincial councils, where they have to elect a chairperson, it makes sense to have provincial ministers. It makes political sense. Remember also now, even if you look at now the cabinet appointments,
yes,
there is a minister now in charge of provincial affairs. So
that being Love Matuke.
Matuke.
Yes.
So now, commonsensically, it means these ministers are accountable or are under Matuke now.
Right.
Administrative and politically speaking. So without the full operation of the provincial councils, it makes sense to have provincial ministers. To me, Bulawayo would not have a problem with the Judith. Apart from political affiliation, what I believe in and what other people may believe in, she has done a lot of work across the political divide.
Indeed.
She has been a uniting factor. I don't think anyone, even if you look at Mateweleland South, Evelyn is a former minister, cabinet minister, and now the reassignment as a provincial minister and being in charge of that province. Richard, looking at that, he's a sitting and current MP. So let's look at that. Let's look at Muda. Muda has served as well as minister in Midlands. Obviously, with the other constitutional issues that were overlooked concerning Manicaland. Let's look at all the other people who have been elected. There's no constitutional violation. So those are some of the issues that maybe we're saying that what the government needs to do is a constitutional realignment to say what constitutionally is the role of provincial ministers. How do we align that with the provincial councils?
Yeah, because that's the big issue.
That's the big issue.
The big issue to say you have the provincial council.
True.
So does the minister then automatically chair the provincial council?
True. So now that becomes a legal and also a political problem. But my view would be we then need to align and say it becomes a legal problem. Or we need a legal solution to that.
Okay.
But to me, looking at that, it will make sense because a provincial chairperson, how do they report then to the office of the president and the president, who is the appointing authority? So it makes sense to have provincial ministers. So to me, it makes political sense to have provincial ministers.
All right.
Then how they are going to relate, then that becomes the next argument. To say the chairperson and the councils, how are they going to relate that, and how are they going to relate to the councils, the metropolitans, and also the provincial councils?
All right.
Yeah, because remember, every provincial council, in terms of non-metropolitans, they are going to second their chairpersons into the provincial council. So how do we deal with that?
All right.
That's what the lawmakers now have to be seized with. Alternatively, that's what the president's office has to be, the OPC, he has to be seized with.
All right.
So I don't have a problem. It makes sense, but want to see how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, indeed, obviously. So balancing the act, there is how everyone is intending everyone seeks to understand that the role of the provincial council and that of the ministers of state, that being the provincial ministers. Now, I want us to look at the ministries before we get to the names.
Okay.
There's been separation of ministries, and I will start off with the first one being the Ministry of Environment. Previously, it was just one ministry, and now it has been separated, that being the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife. Now you have a separate ministry that is specifically dealing with tourism and hospitality. Number two, the Ministry of Youth has been separated from sports. So now you have the Ministry of Youth Empowerment, Development and Vocational Training, and then you have the Ministry of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture. Let's focus on those for now. The separation of those ministries.
It makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense to have youth empowerment, development and vocational training. It's a key ministry. Demographically, most of the people in Zimbabwe, in terms of demographics, we've got more young people. To me, it makes sense to have Tino there. Well, I will comment as well, and say Tino is a very rational person. To me, how he has conducted himself, how he has cooperated even in his previous assignment. I think it makes sense to have him there as Minister of Youth Empowerment, Development and Vocational Training, because we've had a serious skills gap in terms of how young people are integrated. Everyone is crying about youth development and vocational training. I hope that ministry is going to be working very well with the Ministry of Education,
right?
Whether primary and tertiary, higher and tertiary education, to make sure that we've got a lot of youth empowerment, development, and so on. And I'm hoping that even as whoever is the minister, Mtuli, and the deputy, are going to allocate a lot of monies towards youth development and vocational training. So I think it's good to separate it so that it becomes a specific and sector-based ministry. To me, it makes sense. All right. It was cluttering it with the Ministry of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, which is a very, very broad and a huge ministry.
Too broad.
It's too broad. It's too broad. So to me, it makes sense.
And obviously, again, the same thing I think was happening with the Ministry of Environment, Climate, Tourism. It was again too cluttered. I remember having a conversation with the Minister of Tourism, who was the then Minister of Tourism, saying it was actually huge because they're looking at environment, climate change, tourism, wildlife. So it becomes a bit cumbersome. So that ministry has been divided into two. Now we have the Minister of Environment, Climate and Wildlife, who is Mangaliso Ngqobizithandlovu, and the new Minister of Tourism and Hospitality is Barbara Rotsi. Barbara Rotsi was the deputy to Mangaliso in that combined ministry. Your take on that?
This is one of the biggest man spinners. In my other life, I'm a consultant on tourism, on wildlife. It's a huge ministry. There's a lot of scope in terms of global funding.
Right.
So it makes sense to me to separate it from the other ministries. So it makes sense. I think it was a good decision. Barbara has served previously, so in terms of experience, in terms of continuity, it makes sense. In terms of deputizing, people can raise a lot of dust and issues, but I think we're also having somebody who has been elected by the people. So in terms of continuity and in terms of separating it from the other ministries, makes sense as a separate ministry.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's get into the nitty-gritties of the president's appointments. Minister Monica Msangwa has been moved from the Ministry of Information to the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small, Medium Enterprises. While the Minister of Local Government and Public Works is now Winston Chitando, moving from the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development. Let's talk about those.
Okay.
Yep.
Number one, I'll talk about Monica. She tried her best in terms of that ministry, in terms of Ministry of Information, but that's a very difficult ministry. With how she has acquitted herself, and in terms of her capabilities, in terms of her involvement in government, what she has done and her capacity and capabilities, I think she will serve well. I think soft landing, and also it eases pressure on us having Sindiso, and also to say how can somebody fare better in terms of that ministry.
Right.
So let's see how she can do. Obviously, constitutionally the president always has powers to do reshuffling. Let's see how she can fare.
All right.
I think soft landing for her, and she has the capacity. If she stood the pressure in terms of Minister of Information, I think she can do very well in terms of her capacity.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. All right. And now I want us to move over to some other ministries where we saw the Minister of Information, Communication Technology being Tatenda Mavetera, and her appointment sparking lots of debate. You have the new Minister of Information, Publicity, Broadcasting Services, Jenfan Muswere, being appointed there, the new Minister of Mines and Mining Development, Sota Jemu, and we look at the Minister of Energy Development being Edgar Moyo. Now, there's been a debate that has come up to say, in appointing cabinet ministers, do you look at their academic background so that they can contribute effectively to that particular ministry, or you assign and then they are assisted by permanent secretaries?
Okay, I will advance my discussion in a two-pronged manner. Generally, and also being the devil's advocate. General, I will say, is the constitutional prerogative of the president to appoint ministers and deputy ministers. If you win an election, it's your right and it's your prerogative to appoint ministers and deputies. And there are various constitutional guidelines that you must follow. Regional balance.
Right.
You also have to look at racial balance. You also have to look at professional and constitutional professional balance to say, are these people competent?
Indeed.
All right, 4, I would say. You also have to look at infusing the issue of experience, continuity, and youthfulness. It was a delicate balance because you are looking at about almost half of the people being from CCC of being opposition. There never was a GNU. So the president is then constrained to say how many people won in Matabele North, in Matabele South, or all the 10 provinces. Harare and so on, you name the much central and so on. You need to strike a balance. So if you then look at that, then you say you have got Kirsty, who it's okay. I'll not look at that. I'll say Kirsty's appointment clearly gives us a racial balance.
Right.
She's a spokesperson, and remember, she does not work alone. So even when we are passing judgment on her past experience and capacity and what she has done, is it an objective or is a subjective decision that we're making? So Then you look at the Minister of Agriculture.
Yeah.
We have got...
Anxious Maso.
Yeah.
Who did extremely well.
Yes. We are looking at Harry
Tatos,
the deputy minister.
Tatos, yeah.
So now, what did you expect the president to do? Because remember, he has got a constitutional balance of 10 only. That's why now we've had some reversals of appointments, because now we had to balance with the 10 appointments, non-elected as in people we could appoint outside the elected people. So now, you look at the Deputy Minister of Agriculture, you look at KEST, we've got a racial balance.
Right.
Then you're looking at Mat North, because those are the people he could constitutionally, legally, and constitutionally appoint. Richard also had to be an appointment at provincial ministry, and also including one of the deputy ministers, Ngube, from Lupane, that the president was had to appoint. Then you look at Mat South. Mangaliso did not make it through a direct representation. Evelyn also had to come out and to come in. So now I'm saying, if you look at the regional, tribal, racial, and professional balance, then also let's be more academic. Bulawayo, Mtuli had the highest votes for the Bulawayo province.
Yep.
And look, no one can dispute that Mtuli is a fund really in terms of finance. Whether you may like him or not like him, he did relatively well. So let's look at Minister of Finance, Mtuli. Who else could have been appointed? All right, let me take now the cap of the devil's advocate. Who do you think ought to have been appointed into the cabinet or deputy minister was not appointed? Look at the people who were there for the president to appoint. Who is it who was not appointed? Who you think should be appointed? Professionally, academically, regionally, racially, or any other, whatever formula you want to use. So, and remember also, it's also his prerogative to say who he wanted to appoint. Like I've indicated, look at Kirsty, look at Tino, look at Mangaliso. Mangaliso, look, is an accomplished Fundi. Look at Barbara Rose, they've saved me. Look at Opa, and look at Mlevi, Maishome. Look at the Minister of Defense there. If we look at the Minister of Defense, we're saying, okay, who else? Look at Mtswangwa, he is served as chairperson of the war veterans and has been appointed. And you can't say you don't want people to be appointed into that ministry. Yeah. So yes, people can raise issues. Well, look, July is in account. Then Edgar, there's an issue there. I think maybe we would have had a reversal of roles. Okay. Edgar is an accomplished fundi, executionist. It may be heavy on him. That the Ministry of Energy and Power Development is a heavy ministry. Although you have your permanent secretary, you have your directors and so on, but you also have a minister who can be self-capacitated. Edgar is an accomplished, I know, he has done very, very well. So my view was that maybe if he had been seconded in as a full-time minister in terms of Mombeshore is a doctor and so on. But it was also smart to have a minister of state for provincial affairs in the office of president, so that we deal with the ministers. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that would be my take.
All right. Lastly, there is a ministry, a new ministry, skills, audit and development. What is it about?
Well, I can say it's like psychomotor. You remember one time with the Minister of Psychomotor, we don't know what the ministry is all about. But to me, it will make sense to say, in terms of skills audit, are we auditing skills within the government, within the ministries, within the country, and with development that will work with Ministry of Youth, Sports, and so on? To me, well, it's a penumbra. It's a gap. We just want to see how the president has set the scope for the Minister of Skills, Audit and Development. But we are all anxious as a nation, as a country, want to move forward, want to see how this is going to pan out. provincially, how it's going to pan out nationally, but we want to see our country moving forward.
Indeed, well said by Mr. Sindiso Mazibisa from the One of Bulawayo movement. We were discussing the new cabinet appointments. We also spoke about the new mayor of Bulawayo. But before I let you go, Mr. Mazibisa, let's go back to the issue of the new mayors. There's a new mayor in Harare, Ian Makoni. What's your take on that?
I thought my former classmate, just to caveat, my former classmate Giacomo Fume was going to be giving a second bite at the cherry, or alternatively be allowed to be a deputy a mayor of the city of Harare. I think he acquitted himself well. He fought very well for the city of Harare, but you know, it's like Ian is part of the old guard under the old MTC. So now that, but he's an accomplished businessman. He has worked very well in the spaces, in the opposition front. So I think it was time to reward him. I think it was time to reward him. It is what it is. Let's see how it pans out as well for the city of Harare, but we know it's always fireworks.
It's always fireworks. All right. So now that the dust is settled, the election season is over. The cabinet has been appointed. Mayors are being appointed. I know Vic Falls is appointing its own mayor next week. What is your message to Zimbabwe? Elections are gone, done and dusted.
Let's work together as the people of Zimbabwe. This is our country. We have no other homeland. We have no other country. It is what it is. Let's move forward. Another 5 years, let's work together, make money, take care of our children, take care of our country. Let's not fight, whether it's in football, whether it's in politics. Let's move our country forward. That's my message.
Indeed, let me echo those sentiments to say Zimbabwe needs to come together to push certain blueprints that guide the government, and that includes Vision 2030 and obviously the completion of the National Development Strategy. And it all takes you and I to say, let us come together and build this beautiful nation of Zimbabwe. And as President Mnangagwa always says, brick upon brick. Nyika inova kwa nevene vayo ilizwe lakhiwa ngabanikazi balo. It's goodbye for now.